Welcome, everyone. I'm Patricia Levesque, CEO of the Foundation for Excellence in Education. We're thrilled to have policymakers and education stakeholders from across the country joining us today. At Excel in Ed, we believe that policy changes lives. So today we get to learn about one exciting new policy that has the potential to do just that. Before we get started, there's a reminder that all lines are going to be muted so we can enjoy a robust discussion among the panelists. But we welcome your questions and we hope that you will post them in the Q&A feature. We'll be compiling your questions throughout the webinar and we'll have some time at the end to answer them. So I'd like to start by introducing my co-panelist, Penny Schwinn, the Tennessee Commissioner of Education. Commissioner Schwinn comes from a family of educators. She began her work as a high school history and economics teacher. She's previously served in a number of state level roles in Delaware and Texas before leading education work in Tennessee. Welcome, Commissioner Schwinn. And moderating today's discussion is the founder and chair of the Foundation for Excellence in Education and the 43rd governor of the state of Florida, Jeb Bush. Governor Bush, I'm turning it over to you.
Thank you, Patricia. It is a joy to be with policymakers from around the country to talk about maybe the most important issue that we face, which is how do we create a robust teacher pipeline in a country where the teaching profession is aging and where it has a lack of diversity, even though the student population of our country is increasingly diverse. And while there's been some reforms, and we'll talk about one really interesting one with the commissioner in a moment, there hasn't been anything that is scaled to transform the teaching profession to make sure that we get education right and that there's rising student achievement. In 2020, in the midst of the pandemic, under the leadership of Governor Bill Lee and Education Commissioner Penny Schwinn, Tennessee used $20 million of its American Rescue Plan money to create a teacher apprenticeship program for soon-to-be graduates of high school and those that recently graduated. Since that time, the state has helped forge relationships between approved educator preparation programs and 65 school districts. And in January 2022, the U.S. Department of Labor approved Tennessee's program to become the first registered teacher apprenticeship program in the country. In the fall of our national summit, in the fall of 2021, Commissioner Schwinn rightly was bragging about this program, which I love of our foundation. We, in a federalist society, great ideas are stolen and people tout those ideas. And I think it really stimulated a lot of thought, which is why we have so many people on the call today. And she described the Grow Your Own program to a roundtable of state chiefs, all of whom are working to develop their own bold ideas. And she piqued a lot of interest, including that of Commissioner Morath, her former colleague in the Texas Education Department, that recently just received its Department of Labor approval for a teacher apprenticeship program as well. So today we're here to find out more about how that program was developed, what it means for the future of the teaching profession, and lessons learned along the way. I've always learned that the best mistakes, the best learning experience are when you make mistakes, but it's always better to learn from other people's mistakes. You get to the finish line quicker. And so the lessons learned are important. So let's get started. Penny, thank you so much for being here. Why don't you describe the thinking behind the idea to begin with, and how Governor Lee and you worked with the legislature and worked with the federal government in the initial stages of this really exciting program.
Sure. Thank you, Governor, and thanks for having me on in the state of Tennessee. We are excited about this. You know, we were really trying to solve a couple of problems in the state. I think first is we've had a long-term, pretty stable, but long-term teacher shortage. We have about 1,000 vacancies every year, about 65 to 67,000 classrooms. So it's a pretty high percentage. We see that those vacancies exist in ESL and special education, math and science. But we're also starting to see increased vacancies in elementary schools, which we haven't seen before. So we wanted to figure out what was preventing people from entering the profession. And at the same time, we're having conversations about retaining the excellent teachers who are in classrooms now. So one of the things that were identified as a reason for, or a barrier to entry, was really the cost of becoming a teacher. That was pretty prohibitive for many folks, whether those were students currently in colleges and universities, high school students, but also existing school-based staff. And so how do we make it more affordable to become a teacher? And then certainly, how do we think about a pathway that's going to make sure that once you are in the classroom, you can be more successful? And so in looking at some of that work, and then recent studies that have really talked about the importance of mentorship and clinical experiences for teachers, getting in classrooms, getting the practice, getting the real-time feedback. What we found is that more teachers were likely to retain in the profession and be more successful in their first, second, and third years if they had that really good clinical experience. So taking those two lessons learned, and then also looking at what's been happening, frankly, across the country for the last 10 years related to grow your own programs, state level apprenticeship models. We worked very closely with a school district here in Tennessee who had started the first Tennessee grow your own model in Clarksville, Montgomery, to say, what would that look like if we got a federal designation? So it took about 1.5 years across two administrations. But really, I think the good push was getting that kind of bipartisan support at the federal level, having a lot of in-state support from our General Assembly and local school districts who understood the problem we were trying to solve and really empowered the department to go after an effective solution to that. Certainly Governor Lee being really confident in the solution and allowing us to invest $20 million in building out 65 pipelines from the one in 2019. All 65 of those were built out during the pandemic. And then really thinking about, what does it mean to have a high bar of rigor? This is not about just the easy pass to become a teacher. It is not about lowering the bar. It's about saying, how do we really ensure quality and rigor, but have a program and a pathway that is going to lead to more effective teachers who are ready on day one. And that's been a lot of the genesis of what we want to accomplish here, as well as affordability in the future.
So Commissioner, which communities in your diverse state are likely to be most impacted in a positive way by these programs?
Yeah, I think what's so exciting is that we are seeing these programs in rural, urban, and suburban communities. So I can think about communities right here in Metro Nashville and in Memphis, Shelby County, have grow your own programs because they have high vacancy rates. They're just really big districts. You can go 45 minutes south to Williamson County, which is one of the wealthiest counties, not just in Tennessee, but in the country. And they are having a grow your own program for special education where they have a cohort model, and it's filling some very serious needs there. And then I think very personally in our state is our rural communities. We're a predominantly rural state. And when we think about those folks in our very rural communities, it's hard to get people to move there. And so what we have found is that they are more successful in growing their own, keeping those folks who are born and raised in communities. And this gives them a real pathway to become a teacher at no cost to them through the apprenticeship model. And so our rural communities are seeing significant benefits because they're able to get good, high-paying jobs in rural communities to become a teacher. And certainly allowing people to stay in the places where they grew up and want to raise their own families. So we're seeing it across the board.
So Patricia, apprenticeships aren't really a new idea. They're very prominent in Europe particularly, but in the United States, there's a tradition of apprenticeships, but not in the teaching profession. Could you imagine if this was rolled out beyond Tennessee to other states, what impact that could have on some of the challenges in the teaching profession, which is the lack of diversity for a very diverse student population being one, but also teachers that are teaching out of field, teachers that are hard to find in the toughest districts, the toughest schools. Speak a little bit about our experience in seeing the potential of this around the country.
Yeah, thank you, Governor and Commissioner. I think you put a lot of the answers when you were just describing the program. Apprenticeships work for a variety of reasons. I hope that the policymakers who are on this call, I want to give you 4 reasons why I hope in your states you'll consider this grow your own teacher apprenticeship model. And the first is something that we've already heard, which is it allows individuals to earn a wage while they're learning. Many Americans struggle to afford the cost of post-secondary education because they can't support themselves at the same time they're going to school unless they want to incur a lot of debt. And so a teacher apprenticeship model would help solve this problem. Another reason that we're so excited to see this work in Tennessee, in Texas, and some of the other places that it's starting is because it's a way to address the teacher shortage. And specifically, Governor Bush, as you mentioned, if they're intentionally designed, they may also increase that racial, ethnic, socioeconomic, even gender diversity of candidates going into the classroom. And it's worth noting, this grow your own model, it brings training to the community, which means folks don't have to leave their community to get a degree, or as Commissioner Swin has talked about, it makes it easier for rural communities to actually have people who are already living there grow into the profession. A third reason that I think states should consider this model for teacher apprenticeships could be the impact of the quality of teaching in the profession, because it kind of turns the traditional model of teacher education inside out. And so what I mean by that is we're very used to students going to traditional schools of education, and they go to school for 3 or 4 years of an undergraduate education, and maybe they spend 1 semester on the job, whereas apprenticeships get candidates in the classroom right away so that they're learning from more experienced teachers, they're being mentored, they're learning by doing in a controlled environment where hopefully they're also getting constant feedback and support. That's a really important reason to have teaching in this apprenticeship model. And finally, I'll say apprenticeships are going to, I believe, give potential employers, the school districts and the schools, the ability to assess a prospective teacher's ability while on the job, right? Quality of current education preparation programs may have varying levels of effectiveness, but in this apprenticeship model, school districts will be able to see the potential employees, and they can see what can be true for teacher training in the long run. We're so excited about what is going on in Tennessee and very hopeful that the data is going to show that this is the effective model for students down the road.
So Commissioner, let's dig a little deeper into this. Patricia mentions that the traditional way of recruiting teachers is they go to school rather than recruiting in the school in effect and starting earlier. What have been the lessons learned about, are there more young people interested in teaching once they have this apprenticeship experience rather than have it in their heart to be, spend the 4 years to be going to a school of education and in many cases making a big sacrifice? And then a follow-up question to that is, do you anticipate that the traditional teaching preparation programs embedded in our universities principally, are they going to change based on the learnings of this exciting experiment?
Yeah, I appreciate both of those. So when I think about the folks who are entering into grow your own programs, I think one of the lessons we've learned is taking the original model in Clarksville, which really focused on paraprofessionals and students in their teaching as a profession program of study at the high school, and really built that out across the state to have a whole continuum of entry points into the profession. So when you think about kind of one program in 2019 to 65 in 2021 and 2022, we've essentially gone from a handful of teachers, and during the pandemic we now have 650 teachers who are being funded in our Grow Your Own programs. That's more than a 50% cut into what our vacancy rate is just in 3 years. So I think that shows a lot of the demand. When you make it available, people want to enter that. So you have programs where we're targeting high school students who want to be teachers or at least open to it. They're able to get credits much earlier, get some early practice, get their degree a little bit faster, and then have a lot of clinical experience. You have students who are in colleges and universities now who, because we have community college for free through Tennessee Promise, are able to get those junior and senior year tuition and some of their materials covered, plus clinical experience going into their first year of teaching. Or you have people who are in schools now. I think what we found is untapped potential of your paraprofessionals, your bus drivers, your nutrition specialists, people that I think very candidly often get overlooked. And it might be because they had to support their families. They've got kids at home, they've got families, maybe they're taking care of their mom and dad. And so they don't have the money to be able to go full-time into school and pay tuition. This gives them a pathway into the job they always wanted and just couldn't afford, because it gives them a living wage that increases year over year, and it covers the cost of their tuition, books, and materials. So they can become a teacher and be paid to do so, doing work in classrooms. It's life-changing and transformational for many folks there. Just as we've seen people who are career changers or retirees wanting to come back in the profession, they don't want to have to go through 2 years of kind of a traditional model and then take the tests and the credentials. This allows them to get their hands dirty right away, doing the good work with kids, get that immediate feedback. And for us, I think the most important thing is there's no such thing as a first-year teacher anymore. Every first-year teacher now has 2 to 3 years of experience. And don't we want that for our kids? We want our students to be in front of someone who's had the first couple of years under their belt with really good feedback, studying under an amazing teacher who's been a mentor to them. But a first-year teacher should be a third year. And what that's done to your second question for our ed prep providers, it's really starting to push how they think about their own programs. Because if you have one ed prep provider who has shifted the requirements of their programming for new teachers so that they are all eligible to be federal apprentices, now those teachers in that program don't have the same tuition burden. They don't have the same books and materials burden. That is a much better recruitment strategy for those ed preps. And so we are also seeing that a lot of them are starting to shift and change some of their requirements to increase clinical mentorship, to really partner with the state. And we're excited to announce that in the next week, what you will hear is that Tennessee will be launching a national kind of technical assistance support center at no cost to be able to help ed preps both in our state as well as across the country, districts in our state as well as across the country, to set up these apprenticeship models so that anyone can do this at no cost. It shouldn't, if we're stealing from other people, we want people to be able to steal from us. It's part of the beauty of education. And so we are very, very excited to be able to provide those free resources to any state or district in the country through our partnership that we'll announce next week. Very excited about that.
So Penny, just a follow-up question. Thinking as a former policy nerd, so people from all around the country are listening to this and are saying, well, okay, you took the government, the federal government dough. What happens when that runs out? How do you create a sustainable model? How's that going to work?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think that's where the partnership with the General Assembly and certainly the unwavering support of Governor Lee has really been critical for us. So the sustainability for the Grow Your Own model is really through the federal apprenticeship. So every single teacher who is designated or as a federal apprentice, they will have that kind of additional funding to support their tuition, their books. There are also other benefits to becoming a federal apprentice in terms of resources and supports to ensure that you get additional tutoring, support, and resources for studying, help in passing the praxis, feedback. We had one paraprofessional, her car broke down, and because she was a federally approved apprentice, they helped to pay for her Uber and childcare to make sure she could still get to work. So it's pretty incredible, the benefits there. That's the sustainability for the teachers and the future teachers themselves. From a state perspective, we have a commitment from my partner, the Commissioner of Workforce and Labor, to be able to use those federal dollars that every state gets, whether it's at the federal or at the state level or your local workforce boards. We get federal dollars every single year. So putting just a small percentage of that aside to fund programs like these allows for that sustainability, because those are dollars that we know we're going to get. Many states revert a pretty significant percentage of those dollars back to the feds. Why not keep them and make sure that you don't have vacancies in your teaching profession? That is something that is sustainable for long past when these federal relief funds are expired.
So I get you answered one of my next questions, which related to why seek approval from the federal government when we're a bottom-up country, but you answered it. There's a good reason to do it, to create the more sustainable model for empowering these apprenticeships to become a really interesting pipeline for teachers. So Patricia, Tennessee is obviously a leader in this regard. What other states are looking at versions of this or doing things that are creative as well in this whole teacher pipeline question that we're talking about today?
Yeah, thanks, Governor. So you mentioned one is that Texas, Commissioner Morath has already started following this Grow Your Own model that Tennessee kicked off. I would say there are a lot of other states that are focusing on the pipeline, and they may be focusing on different ways to increase individuals getting into in the teaching profession. So many states have been focusing on creating alternative routes to teacher certification. These are usually focused on getting career changers or people with bachelor's degrees, but they don't have an undergraduate degree in education into the classroom. But unlike Tennessee's program, they're not all defraying or eliminating the cost of education, or they're not necessarily focused on younger populations like high school graduates or education paraprofessionals. But there are many states that are looking at streamlining or creating these alternative paths to certification. So Florida, under your leadership, created multiple paths to get to be a Florida teacher, full reciprocity of accepting other states' teaching certificates, recognizing the national board or the American board certification, or recognizing Teach for America training, doing something really novel and recognizing higher education teaching experience to qualify you for high school teaching certification. There are states like Florida who are allowing their community colleges to start getting into offering education instruction or bachelor's degrees, and even requiring universities to offer teaching as a minor and not just as a major. Florida, Arizona, and most recently Indiana have passed laws to allow districts to issue what we have called adjunct teacher certification status. And these are typically for individuals who want to teach less than full time. So remember, in Florida, when we did it, it was with that notion of you have NASA and the Kennedy Space Center, and you have retired engineers who in their retirement may want to teach one high school class and give back in their retirement. So an adjunct certification is a way to allow these professionals to give back, to teach in our schools. And it could be to allow, let's say, the professional computer science, computer tutor, business owner, or art instructor to come and work in our schools for just 1 or 2 classes a day while they still are managing their businesses. These concepts are behind the laws to give districts flexibility to fill vacant positions, because they're filling them with people who have life experience, not necessarily an education training background. Governor, there's other states that have been focused on recruiting Relay Graduate School of Education to their state. It's a mastery-based teacher preparation program. Relay has campuses in about a dozen states now. Some states invest in Teach for America, right? Trying to get top tier non-education majors recruited to serve in the teaching profession. Another initiative that I'm watching that is exciting is there's an organization called Bloom Board that's working with states to help education paraprofessionals get micro-credentials that will help them become a teacher and also defray the cost of the training and those micro-credentials. There are several states that are providing full or partial loan forgiveness for young people who want to teach and or to teach in their state. Some of these programs are targeted specifically for teachers of color to add to the diversity of the teaching profession in their state, or they're targeted for those hard to staff subject areas. There's actually legislation moving through South Carolina this session that would provide extra money to their students who are on their life scholarship, which is their in-state merit-based college scholarship. And if students go into a targeted degree, of which teaching is one, those students could earn an additional $2,500 a year for 3 years in support of gaining their teaching degree. So there are a lot of different ways that states are trying to attract individuals into the classroom and increase that pipeline. Florida and some other states have been focused on teacher pay and raising minimum teacher pay. I'd have to mention Tennessee as having passed some major reforms in school finance. And one of the biggest shifts in Tennessee is moving from a resource or a staffing-based model to a student-based funding formula. And what that shift can do is really empowers Tennessee school districts to target funding on recruitment or retention of teachers in higher need shortage areas, because now they have the flexibility to do that. So it's not an exhaustive list, but there are a lot of other things that states can consider in addition to a grow your own teacher apprenticeship model to help fill that pipeline.
Thank you. Commissioner, we have a mantra in in Excel and Ed, which is if you don't measure, you don't care, or what get measured gets done. I mean, there's a lot of ways to say it. But clearly, when you're doing something outside the box, you want to prove that it works in order to garner the necessary long-term support inside your own community. You want the legislature to buy into it because it's successful. You want districts to love it. And we're interested in, making sure that great ideas that are measured and that are successful can go across the country. So how are you going to measure the success of this program?
Yeah, so we've got some input metrics, and then we certainly have some output and summative metrics that we're using. For those input measures, we are looking at retention within the program. That's actually something that the federal government will look at. Are the students or apprentices that you've entered in, do they retain through completion, and what is their success? So we are looking at that pretty carefully. We require the praxis assessment to become a teacher in the state. So we want to see what is that pass rate compared to like peers. How many takes or retakes does it take? And then what were the things that allowed for that student to be more successful? So it's really about retention, praxis, and then we have requirements related to evaluation in the state. So those folks who are federally recognized apprentices working in classrooms with mentor and master teachers will get that same kind of evaluation that we would see for a traditional teacher. It's part of that feedback loop. Those are three kind of leading indicators to help us know about success. Because remember, for us, this isn't just about filling the vacancy. We want to make sure that we are matching that rigor that we would expect and really keeping expectations high. So that's how we know that we've got the right folks coming in. There is an interview process to become an apprentice. It's not like a come one, come all, any warm body. That is not what we are looking for. We're really looking for folks who want to become teachers. They're serious about it. And this is a pathway for them to be successful within that journey. And so that interview process is a nice way for us to have that gatekeeper to make sure we're holding that high bar. Once we have folks who have kind of gone into teaching, what we are looking at is doing a comparison. So all first-year teachers, second-year teachers, and third-year teachers. How did our apprentices do compared to the state? How did our apprentices do with similar groups of students that they are serving in similar types of communities? And then over the next 5 to 7 years, we are going to measure retention in the profession. So those are the ways that we're looking at whether or not this is a successful program.
So have you started the measurement process? I mean, will you release results early enough? Because I'm too old to wait for 7 years.
Yeah, understood. Yes, so we will report on this every year. So both our leading indicators as well as our summative metrics will be part of our Grow Your Own report. Because look, I mean, there are things that we would do differently if we could go back. There are things that we know we will want to do better and things that we're going to want to replicate. And so we want that to be very publicly available. That data transparency is critical for everybody. So if another state can learn from our mistake, I certainly hope that they will, because those are kids sitting in those classrooms as well. So you'll see that data report that will come out annually with our Grow Your Own report. What I can say now in the initial data is that we are seeing that we have a significantly more diverse workforce for those who are federally recognized apprentices. That is double, triple, sometimes quadruple what you see in traditional programs in the same local community. We are seeing that the early signs around the praxis assessment, kind of the gearing up to taking those future teachers are doing significantly better because of the technical assistance. And we're seeing the walkthrough data that has been shared is really positive in terms of what you would expect to see for a first or second year teacher in these new apprentices. So very excited about all of those.
Awesome, thank you. Patricia, based on the initial success in Tennessee, what kind of suggestions would you have to build on it? Because again, back to this belief that reform is perpetual. You build on, you do one thing, you don't check the box, it creates the next opportunity to embrace new ideas that you wouldn't have been able to implement had you not done the first one. So what kind of ideas do you think are out there that Penny will grab a hold of and build continued success?
Yeah. Well, we talked in the last round of questions about other things related to teacher pipeline, but it just in a broader perspective beyond teacher pipeline, I think to improve outcomes for kids and opportunities, Tennessee starts from a really great foundation. So implementing, sustaining all of the things that they have in place is going to be really important. They've made incredible strides under Governor Lee and Commissioner Schwinn's leadership. Just last year, Tennessee passed the Tennessee Literacy Success Act and the Learning Loss and Remediation Act, which together make for a really comprehensive early literacy policy with professional development and curriculum that is rooted in the science of reading, and with a recognition that kids shouldn't be passed on if they can't read, that they need additional supports and interventions beginning in kindergarten. I already mentioned Tennessee this session passed the Tennessee Investment in Student Achievement Act, which is this monumental shift in their state funding formula, switching to a student-based funding formula where individual students who are, let's say, low income or special needs are getting funding and priority. In addition to these things, Tennessee has remained committed to measurement through a summative end of year assessment. And so these are things that Tennessee already has a really, really good base in. I think I would love to see Tennessee do more in expanding opportunities for kids. They've got some really strong choice options like charter schools and a small education savings account program for kids with special needs, and another ESA program that's in litigation. But we're seeing other states really look at expanding out of school learning opportunities by providing, specialized micro grants that can expand the classroom day and year by providing those additional supports that are directed by parents. I would say the final thing that Tennessee could continue, because they've already started some really good work here, and that is in strengthening college and career pathways. This Grow Your Own apprenticeship is just another strong step for Tennessee in continuing change. All states need to ensure that kids have better information about their college and career options. And so Tennessee is going to have to think about, how do we get the word out to our Grow Your Own candidates? And at the same time, I think the state could take the time thinking about, how do we make sure all of our students know about all of the different pathways that are available to them? So these are a handful of things, but as I said, Tennessee has such a good foundation and really strong leadership in the executive branch and legislative branch. So I'm excited to watch all the progress that they are going to be making.
So Commissioner, as a follow-up to that, where do you think the next complementary reforms will emerge because of this? And go back a little bit. By the way, the folks that are sending questions in the chat, they ought to move to the Q&A portion. If you've got opinions, chat away. If you have questions, go to Q&A. But as it relates to just the process of getting approval from Washington, can you start with that? Was that a root canal, or was that a pretty easy process?
I would say it was a gentle but very long root canal. So we submitted politely. We submitted our application. It'll be 2 years ago this July. So it has been a long process. Again, part of that was we were right about to get approval under the last administration. There was an administration shift, and then we kind of needed to reset with a different group of stakeholders. And while that is a painful process sometimes, when you're so close, I actually think it was really good, because what it did is it meant that we had bipartisan, very diverse support from lots of different organizations who all found a common and shared belief, goal, value in what we were trying to do. And so we got the approval through a lot of that, like I said, additional support. What I'm putting in the chat is our playbook. So we have not released this yet. It is on our website. And so again, we made a lot of mistakes as a state agency, kind of a start, stop, fail, try again. And one of the things that we did learn was just the need to be able to look at each group, because it's not just the state agency or just a district or just an ed prep. We are essentially the employer as the state agency. Our job is to make sure we have that high bar and maintain it, not let anybody do it, but really say, you have to make sure you're going to do this well for kids. We need to work with districts, and they have a whole planning and forecasting process. They need an ed prep partner who will work with them on this work. And they need to work with their local labor boards to ensure that that funding either comes from the state or it comes from their local boards. And so this playbook is essentially a step-by-step walkthrough of exactly how you can create a federal apprenticeship yourself as a state or as a district with your state. And it has it for each and every different stakeholder who's going to be involved. I think my big ask is that this was kind of the blood, sweat, and tears of our learning. We borrowed from a lot of people who came before us and have been doing this work for a long time. And so if you make it better, just let me know so we can make it better for our kids. But we're excited about being able to say these are taxpayer dollars. Tennessee gets a lot of taxpayer dollars from places all around the country. And so it is our responsibility to make sure that that's a free resource that we put out. So we're excited to see what other folks are doing. And I'll put the website in the chat as well.
So if you have the website, you have the driver's manual, if you will, but if people have questions, you mentioned that there's going to be a resource, ongoing resource for being able to have queries and have answers.
Yes, so we right now we've got 2 folks at the department who can answer lots of questions, Jean Luna and Emma McCauley, who are happy to do that. And then next week, we will have the launch of a technical assistance center that will be able to answer questions, walk folks through exactly what to do. We're going to do a lot of case studies to be able to say, look, if you're a district that kind of looks like this, go ahead and call these folks, and a lot of that peer-to-peer. So that will be a in Tennessee that's really intended to provide that in-state and national technical assistance at no cost, because it should not, if it doesn't cost anything to become a teacher, you can become a teacher for free. We need to make sure we're all helping one another get enough highly qualified folks in classrooms in front of our kids. It's the best thing we can do to make sure every child has access to an excellent education.
I would a small edit to what you just said. Nothing's free. You have to earn it.
Yeah, that's right.
Teachers, apprentice, it's hard work, right? It's not, you're given this opportunity and it's earned success.
Yeah, that's right.
Eliminates the barrier of financial, the financial cost, but this isn't just getting some for nothing. This is hard work, which is the way it should be, right?
That's right. I appreciate that.
So we have questions. And I'll start with a short one, which is, would this be possible for CTE teachers?
Yes.
I sure hope so.
Yeah. Yes, it is. It's really any teacher. And honestly, we've grow your own from a teacher and a teacher apprenticeship. But I mean, if we think bigger and into the future, you can have federal apprenticeships for social workers, counselors. You think about that for administrators. It's really about meeting those apprenticeship requirements at the federal level. We're starting with teachers because we think that is critically important, but our CTE teachers will be part of that. One of the things that we need to do in Tennessee, and I think you'll see some movement on that next legislative session, is that there are a lot of really good folks who don't want to completely leave their professions to become CTE instructors. You think about someone who's running a construction company, they might want to come and teach a single CTE course in local schools. We need to make sure there's enough flexibility to allow that person to come in, get the pedagogical training he or she needs, get kids that really good on the ground experience from someone doing the work in real time, and then allow that person to continue with their other jobs. So that level of flexibility is something that we're going to be looking at in this program as well as just generally.
So a kind of a follow-up to that is, if a CTE college was interested in running an apprenticeship program for future teachers, could they do it?
Mm-hmm. They could. It's really about meeting those minimum requirements in terms of the apprenticeship. And so I think we would welcome and want to see and frankly encourage any type of college and university who wants to expand the number of qualified teachers we have. This should not be a limiting experience. I think to your point, it's hard work with a high bar required. And if people are willing to meet that bar, then I think it's kind of a come one, come all.
So kind of getting a little more details of a question comes about what the compensation is. What are the benefits for the apprentice in this program? You have salary and you have credit. I guess if students are in college or in high school, you can have accelerated college credit. Explain can you go into a little more detail about that?
Sure. So in order to qualify for the apprenticeship, the state has to ensure, and the employer at the district level, you get an increasing salary each and every year. So you have to have salary increases for the 2 to 3 years that you are in place. We do that step increases each semester. And sometimes that's competency and sometimes that's time bound, but you have those kind of very clear marks of increase. There are tax benefits to being an apprentice. And like I said, there are additional wraparound benefits, especially when you think about like that teacher whose car broke down. We've got a school custodian who is able to kind of do work as a paraprofessional during the day, take care of his family at night, and really change the trajectory of kind of his entire life. And so you see some of those benefits. And then all of that coursework and those materials between the federal apprentice dollars and then usually business and industry that continues to support that apprentice, they are able to get that education at no cost, plus the additional tutoring and technical assistance. So that's certainly the Tennessee model. There are lots of other different approaches into that, but I think for us, it's been really important to say, become a teacher at no cost and be paid to do so. Those two things have to be true to really expand this opportunity to anyone who wants to take advantage of it.
Patricia, chime in anytime you want. So if not, I'm going to keep asking questions that are in the Q&A section here. This one is, I'll just read this one. As teachers in the primary grades have the primary responsibility for learning with students age 5 through 8 or 9, having the secondary responsibility for learning, then in secondary school, the instructor has the secondary responsibility for learning. The student has the primary responsibility. What I call the great transition. I probably screwed that up, but you get the point. Do you see how the grow your own teachers could result in much smaller primary school classes while we allow motivated students to study in larger groups for technical subjects in high school?
I mean, I'll jump in. I think yes, and for a number of reasons. If you have an apprentice, what that allows you to do in the elementary school grades is you can certainly divide up into smaller class sizes. You can do smaller working groups. We have some apprentices that serve in kind of a leader role in first part of the day, and then we'll go to high dosage tutoring in the RTI blocks or the intervention blocks for the rest of the day. So they're getting small group and whole group instruction. I do think that what this does allow, because you're getting those apprentices in, you can potentially staff additional teachers. We do that through some class size waivers here in Tennessee. So we've got a requirement of, let's say, 20 students within a grade. If you tick that up to 21 or 22 in a certain grade or at the high school level, instead of 24 or 23 and a half, you can go up to 26. It frees up some additional money to lower class sizes in the younger grades. So there's lots of different ways that you can be flexible within your existing policy to get the smaller class sizes exactly where you need them, and then have 1 or 2 extra students in a couple of classes. That happens now. It just doesn't always happen to lower class sizes. Sometimes it goes to funding other things. We really try to limit class size waivers to be about lowering class sizes in certain grades and funding additional paraprofessionals or apprentices in classrooms, at least in Tennessee.
Great. What's the age comparison between teacher candidates in the traditional programs and those in apprenticeships?
So for us, it's kind of 2 ends of the spectrum. We've got a lot of students who are in their teaching as a profession program of study in their high schools. So they're future teachers. They know they want to be teachers. They're in high school. They're getting a lot of those college credits in a 2+2 model. So a lot of those early freshman, sophomore year classes they're taking in high school, and then they're able to get some on the ground experience. They finish their college degree in 2 to 3 years. So those tend to be obviously on the much younger side. We also have a number of those paraprofessionals, custodians, bus drivers, special education assistants who are in the program as well. They tend to be kind of in the 40 to 50 year range in terms of just, again, they've got families they're looking to support and other bills they got to pay and mortgages and everything else. And so we tend to see those folks kind of in that, I'll say 35 to 50 range. So kind of two different groups. Both are getting, I think, a real benefit out of participation.
You have people that have already graduated that have a bachelor's degree that are apprentice that come back to be apprentice?
We're seeing that in some of our newer programs. So in our original kind of benchmark program, which was in Clarksville, Montgomery, they really focus on the high school and paraprofessionals. We've got other districts where they have a lot of career changers and retirees. Those are folks that have those bachelor's and master's degrees. They were an engineer and they really want to come teach science. And so this is about a streamline of being able to get that credential, pass the requisite classes to become a full-time math or science teacher in schools. We see a lot of those, and that is a much faster program, but they can still do that at no cost as an apprentice, which is really, really nice.
There's a question about the program offering opportunities for longer teacher induction time frame, and finding ways to offer a more gradual and supported induction seems to be a much needed strategy to ensure greater rates of success and for teachers new to the profession. What's your initial experience in that?
Yeah, so I think for us, and Patricia, I'd be interested in what you've seen in other parts of the country that we can learn from, especially on this, because one of our biggest complaints from our school districts is they get teachers who have recently left their ed prep programs, and then they essentially have to do a whole retraining of, well, this is how we do things in our district. Here are the materials we use. Here's the culture that we're trying to build, or here are the practices or pedagogical experiences you should have had. This essentially reduces that because the district is hiring the teachers who will be their permanent classroom teachers after they leave the program. So those teachers understand district climate and culture, they understand the goals, they know the materials, and the higher ed partner, the ed prep, is using those same materials to support that apprentice. And so the induction period is actually happening as they are earning their degree and their credential. So there's a more seamless transition. You're just going from being the paraprofessional in the classroom to now having your very own classroom. And I will just say personally, because I've had a chance to talk with a lot of our apprentices in the state, there's something really special about someone who wants it that badly. I talked to two women in a rural part of the state 2 weeks ago, and they both have kids at home. They are balancing, their work as paraprofessionals and supporting their families, taking classes at night. And the emotion that they have about the dream of being a teacher, how hard they are working, and then just hearing them envision that first day, that first moment when they have a classroom all of their own. It's a really powerful experience to have with somebody else, and just know how beautiful it is to be a teacher and know that a lot of folks are having their dreams kind of made true for them through this. And that's been, I think, an extra special part of the entire experience.
So the structure, the wage structure it varies by district, I assume, just as it would beginning pay and median pay would vary depending on where you are in the state. But is that correct?
That's right. So it'll vary depending on the salary schedules and structure within each individual school district.
How are the school leaders and mentor teachers being prepared to support apprentice teachers? So this is interesting, kind of the inverse of what we've been talking about. How do you think about capacity building at the school level to really support the apprentice?
I think this is something we're going to need to get better and better at, frankly, because one of the things is we've really had kind of incentivized and supported our local school districts to figure out what that coaching strategy is. So they're mirroring their existing coaching practices with their apprentices. I think one of the things in reflection that we've seen is that having a kind of a module of this is best practice, here's what we would encourage, here's what we've seen that works, and here's what doesn't work, giving that kind of guidance and support to our mentor and master teachers, and frankly, their instructional leads at the district level about this is just good practice, whether it is an apprentice or a paraprofessional or a brand new teacher. That's something that we're going to be leaning into more. I think we've been a lot more kind of hands off as a state, knowing that this is now expanding pretty substantially beyond kind of the initial school districts. That's something that we're seeing as a big area of need. And so our technical assistance provider at the higher ed level is also going to be providing that level of support with our walkthrough tools and coaching strategies. So that's something I think if people have best practices, we welcome that information, because we will also be launching some of that additional work this year.
So for those that are in departments of education at the state level, what's necessary to be the catalyst for the development of these apprenticeship partnerships?
So I think it's not to your point, it's not easy. So I think if people are looking for a silver bullet of, the magic place you go and just get a lot of teachers to fill your vacancies, this is not that thing. This is saying, if we are serious about filling every classroom with a high quality teacher who's going to provide an excellent education to every child, this is a sustainable way in which to do that and ensure that you have even higher performing teachers in those first years. And so I would say, we've set aside capacity. So we have actual staff members who there's a small grow your own team, but I'll be honest, it's one or two people. This isn't like a team of 30 or 40, because what you are really doing is setting a high bar, communicating what that bar is going to be, and then walking people through how to complete the forms for the federal government. And then after that, it's about providing technical assistance to your districts about what that process can look like. So it's a lot of the facilitation work that states do well. I will say, though, that it is better to take your time and get the structures in place. And again, I think the resources we're putting out had that in mind. Make sure you do not waver from that high bar, and then have very clear channels of communication for your school districts. That's going to be incredibly important in terms of the sustainability, or the federal government can take that apprentice away very, very quickly. They really are looking for quality in these programs.
Can the state and school districts use teacher development dollars for both the training of teachers to teach, to help guide the apprenticeship candidates or teacher candidates, and directly to help them? So how are you using state monies to do this?
Yeah, we're using state dollars. Folks can also use their Title II dollars and really braid federal and state dollars together. So a lot of the teacher training and support that can happen under Title II, you're able to use that for your mentor or master teachers, and then start up for the state agency work that happens at school district levels. And then our state dollars, we've got a number of flexible uses for those. And so we do that through state grants, or I think part of our new funding formula will allow for significant more flexibility for districts to be able to use now their funding formula dollars to go towards things like this, those extra stipends and bonuses for those mentor and master teachers who will be putting more work in, or to fund a person who is really focused on retention and recruitment of high quality instructors. This is a part of that role that could be really helpful. It just takes about a year of thoughtful planning to be able to accelerate quite quickly.
How do EPPs instruct their apprenticeships if not during the typical day? Do they find instruction going online, evenings, weekends? How does that work?
Yeah, we've got programs that are online, kind of dual hybrid online evenings. We have programs that are all in person in evenings. And then we've got programs where the teacher will do some instruction during the day, but it's so close to the college campus, they'll be able to take some classes in the early afternoon or late afternoon, and then do some of the after school tutoring. So it really depends on your proximity to that college campus and whether there's an online offering or not. I'll say our very rural communities are really benefiting from the evening and online classes versus those where they have several universities within kind of a 5 to 10 minute driving distance, and you can have more of a mixed model there. But I think, again, it's pushing on ed preps. As much as we push on K-12 districts, I think now's the time where we really have to push on ed preps around flexibility and quality if they're going to kind of keep up with the demand and frankly, the shrinking supply. They really have to be part of the solution, and those are the ed preps that we tend to lean on and be more likely to partner with. So that's something that I think state agencies have a very unique position. It's hard to do. Change is hard, of course, but if we're not pressuring ed preps as much as we're pressuring our K-12 districts for that fundamental change in how we do business, we're missing a really big part of that full continuum. So I think that's something that we're positioned to do that local districts just can't in the same way.
Have you had any issues with students not being able to work in the district due to lack of housing? And if so, how's that been addressed?
We haven't seen that as much different than what we would normally see in like a Metro Nashville. Most of our teachers kind of live outside of the city. It's gotten much more expensive. But when you think about those folks who are currently in programs, so our rural communities, for example, our existing paraprofessionals who are participating, they are already there. I think that's the beauty of Grow Your Own, is it's people who are already in the community living there and want to stay. This is incentivizing them to be able to stay as teachers in your community. So the housing hasn't been as big of an issue for us in Tennessee.
Great. Patricia, do you have any questions or comments?
Are you on closing thoughts? Because I'll tell you, for every policymaker out there, unless you are in a state that doesn't have a teacher shortage and you're you're not having trouble staffing, this is absolutely a model that I would encourage you to consider. And one of the best aspects about it that Commissioner Schwinn has talked about, it's a way to use federal funds that every single state receives and that many states don't fully utilize on this really important area of teachers. And the growing your own model is just absolutely something that I think we should see across the country in all 50 states.
That's your closing remark, Patricia?
No, I've got more. I've got more always with, Governor, like your closing remarks, I think for policymakers is always, go big and be bold. And mine is you can walk and chew gum at the same time, right? Do multiple things. Don't ever stop. I think the states like a Tennessee or a Florida or Arizona or Indiana, like states that you were always seeing an upward trajectory, it's because they tackle multiple issues every year. I mean, this is a redistricting year and an election year, and Tennessee tackled school finance reform at the same time as they're implementing, this grow your own program and making sure that they've got increasing equitable funding for charter schools. Like they tackle multiple issues a year. And the states, if you're a policymaker and listening, I think the states that we always have heartbreak over are the ones that treat education like a checklist. We put 10 million into this program, check, and then we go and move on to other things. I just think not only should state leaders be working on multiple issues and making sure that they do them, I would say this particular issue and at this particular time, we're in a time where there's a great deal of divisiveness, lots of tribal actions and words, and to see a state like Tennessee tackle really big issues in a way that brings people together, that creates a win for students, that creates a win for school districts and teachers, like this teacher apprenticeship program. It's bipartisan. It's really important for state leaders to take on big things, and they can take on big things that unite us and rather than divide us. And it's wonderful to watch what they're doing. I hope other states copy.
Penny, one quick question and then your closing remarks, if you don't mind. Are the teachers unions, have they embraced this?
I think that's one of the benefits of us taking the additional time for federal approval is we did get a letter of support from the NEA or TEA affiliate. And what that really did for us is it ensured that we were able to start working and begin to work with all of our stakeholder groups. Again, it's really everybody, but you have folks who normally do not agree on very much at all in education, being able to say, yes, we need to fill vacancies. So all of our teachers aren't picking up 6 or 7 additional jobs on top of the one that they're in. Yes, we should pay teachers more. And yes, we should make sure that we have stipends available for mentors and master teachers. So some of the things that you see that get the program to work, that's really been an important part of the conversation with our collective bargaining groups. We don't have the unions in Tennessee. I know someone mentioned that, but we do still bring that same TEA affiliate NEA to the table. And we'll continue to do that as the programs expand. I think that's going to continue to be important for us.
Any other comments?
I'm just very great. I mean, I get a lot out of these sessions. And so again, any feedback or thoughts, pushes you have for Tennessee, we learn from lots of folks in building this. And so for us, I took probably 6 or 7 things that we're going to have to do from what Patricia said on the pushes for Tennessee, which I love. So hopefully these resources are helpful, but please send feedback. I think for us, what's really important is that we are all in this together. We are all individual states, of course, but they are millions and millions of children across our country. They go between borders all the time. Our collective responsibility is to do right by them, elevate this profession, and make sure that no matter where you live in this country, you have a great education every single day from a highly qualified teacher, period. That should be our minimum low bar for any student, whether that's rural, suburban, or urban. This is our big push to be able to make that true for more kids. And so we're just grateful for the districts and teachers and students who are doing the hard work in Tennessee. They're the ones who I think deserve all the credit for this.
Patricia, is this video going to be available for people? There was a lot of
yes, absolutely. A lot of info. We've recorded it. We're going to be uploading it to YouTube and then making it available to the public. But for everyone that registered for this webinar, you'll not only be getting the link to the YouTube, but you'll also receive a copy of the wonderful playbook with all of the details of how Tennessee made this work.
Commissioner, thank you so much for your leadership, and thanks for all those that participated with us in this hour. Appreciate you all.
Thank you.